question Charles is asking is that why is, again, the idea is, why can't the guides just, you might say, impose their will and decide that everything is a benefit for everybody, okay, and that everybody just, be okay, etc. Well, uh, it can be so. It can be so. It's just like parents could, give their children everything they want all the time. Let's use that as an example. That could be so. But it's rather interesting how life is. Okay, so that's us from our personal view. And I get it. We have this personal view because we struggle here with what we're doing. I see that. And I do too. I struggle here too because it's just how the physical realm is. And so we would rather have things okay. It would be like we could just walk along the earth and the flowers grow and, the fruit trees come up and etc. And it's all there for us. And that would be great. But realistically, in creation here, one way to look at it is that what we're experiencing here is what has been decided upon. And through the process of us deciding with our free will equals our experience. So what we're experiencing here with everything that's going on, it's very simple. You see, because we've decided what we have for the longest time and it's equaled what it has, now we're all of a sudden waking up and seeing what we've decided and we don't like it. So we want it different. So we have to go through the process of, recognizing how to do that. So this is where we're at. We've all contributed to this. And it's okay, but then again, it's not okay. So it's both sides. So it's okay in the respect that it's part of our wake up. We now see what we've created. We've had to go through this process to see that. It's just like walking along the road and you trip and you fall and you hurt your leg and all of a sudden you wake up to the pain that you have from the fall. That's a wake up. You all of a sudden realize, oh gee, I have pain. I'm experiencing this. So that's part of the wake up. So even though things are really bad, which they are on the earth right here because of, we use that idea, because of what's been decided. But the flip side is that what is taking place creates a greater wake up. The worse it gets, the greater possibility to wake up and recognize what is taking place. You see, that's just the isness life is. It is that recognition. But again, with the free will, accordingly. In other words, we're having the experience, we're seeing how bad things are, but with our free will, we're deciding how things are going to be according to us personally. So we either go along with it and we accept the struggle, which, yes, you have to do that too, because you just do. You're breathing the air is what it is. But at the same time, you can also decide to, see beyond it, you might say, learn to recognize more. It's a choice, see? That's where your free will comes in. So this is a challenge. Yes, it's a challenge to wake up. And just, again, like the chicken breaking out of the eggshell, that's toughy. That's a toughie to do that. I mean, you're in an unconscious level and you're breaking out of this eggshell. You don't know if there's light out there. You just have this instinct to start pecking away at something, and because you're in blackness, little chick is in blackness, solid blackness, and starts pecking away. What is it that determines you to start pecking away at what? How do you know there's something there? You're just in blackness. But you do, and all of a sudden, wow, there's all of a sudden light. there becomes, there becomes something else besides this blackness. I mean, when you really look at it, it's quite amazing what we're going through. And the idea here is that now you have the knowledge to take advantage of it every moment, because that this wake up that's taking place with you is very precious. This is where I do not take it for granted. So all of a sudden, does it make sense to keep agreeing to the distortion, even though it seems to be a lifestyle? Doesn't make sense to me at all to just keep agreeing to it. So that's where I try to do something that offsets the agreement with what is creating the demise in this world. Yes, people do and can have a lifestyle, but it's more than a lifestyle here. It's recognizing what's really taking place. And so, yes, stepping up along the lines of what we're doing makes sense, because eventually things can be implemented here. But it's not about saving the planet, because most people don't care to save it. So that's a struggle. We're not going to arm wrestle everybody into agreeing with us saving the planet. But in the meantime, it's really about waking up. It's really about seeing what's taking place. And that's where your free will comes in. So when you're asking a question like that, it's mainly along the lines of, why can't everything just be wonderful here? Well, that's kind of the God Jesus idea. All right. Yes, at the same time, you want your life to be okay, but will you sacrifice waking up for a lifestyle just here? And this is all you see with your personal self. You see, there are so many subtle variables along the lines. Yes, I don't like what's going on in the world, but at the same time, it motivates me to constantly activate something that does make sense and create a benefit, you see, by that very fact. But if I settle in and become comfortable where everything's nice, because there's a lot of people in the world that live in nice spots. I was just reading an article in an international magazine, and these people had moved from the United States to Ecuador, and this lady made the statement. She'd moved there in about 2005, and that is that if I would have stayed in the United States, I would have died because of the air, the pollution, the Wi-Fi, the food, everything. She lost like 100 pounds. She's living in Ecuador. The food is, much more primo, etc. Well, that's good, but she's still on the earth, so now she's in a more self-satisfied lifestyle. And that sounds good, but along with the earth, she'll just go back to sleep because the whole earth is in demise. It may sound good for a while, but realistically, overall, now that you have the awareness, it's not going to work. So again, it is, but it isn't. You might say fixing things accordingly. We do the best we can, but at the same time, that's not the bigger picture to make everything okay. Because then again, we fall back into being self-satisfied. So it's just like climbing a big mountain. At what point do you stop and just hang there? And then what? Life is becoming more aware. You keep going, even if it's a struggle or whatever, you keep going until you finally see it, until you finally see this reality. So the personal self will ask these questions again, and it's okay. It's okay. It has to sort itself out. But the subtlety of free will is very interesting, and this is where most people will not see this reality. They have the idea, but they do not see it because they're still looking for a personal comfort zone here. And it's not that you shouldn't, But if that becomes first in your life, then you're not seeing it. So again, you're seeing what the personal self wants, and your real awareness wants to recognize this reality aside from the bodies that it's taken on. So yes, we do the best we can, but I don't look for comfort or anything. I just look to get along with whatever I'm doing, because I see the real awareness, and that's very important to me, not a lifestyle. I'm not looking for a lifestyle. But then the next step is, like I've said many times, is that to see others succeed, because it's really the bigger picture of seeing the accomplishment of others wake up. Because without that wake up, no, you basically, it's kind of like you go one way or the other, and it's very, very real. And as you become more comfortable, then you become, again, more self-satisfied. It's just very interesting how it works. And so, actually, there's really no explanation for it. There really isn't, because the isness life it's just, you just have to recognize it, and then you do something accordingly, or you don't. Yes. This personal element is very, very interesting, because we've come through this for lifetimes, and we've needed that, just like when we were with our parents. But at some point, we have to get away from our parents, because again, we know within ourselves it's not working. That's the reality life is. Life is always on, and it's not that it's talking to us, okay? But that communication does come to us in its own way. That's really a secondary position. The reality life is an isness, like the sun shining, and we know what that is aside from the personal self. But it's this personal self that activates us to recognizing what we already know, what we already is. See, it's just very interesting how it works. It's amazing how it works. And so it's a very subtle line between just like thought, imagination, and isness. It's all very subtle how that is. And so it's very acute how it all blends in with itself. It's like the color of a rainbow and the sun coming through, the atmosphere. It's very subtle how it is. Very, very subtle. But it all blends in. And it's at what point do you recognize the difference? You see? And so the world sees what it does. The world is basically striving, because people are not aware of this isness. They're basically striving for some personal situation, some personal satisfaction. And when they have it, well, they're going to hang on to it. That makes sense. But then again, overall, it doesn't. When you compare it, when you have the recognition to compare it with the isness, then it doesn't make sense any longer. But in the meantime, it does. Yes. So a baby sitting in its crib and being all comfy with its blankets and its pacifier, that makes sense at that point. But eventually, it's not going to make sense anymore when the person's 25 years old and sitting in the crib, etc. It's not going to make sense anymore to them. They're going to recognize what's going on, and it's like, hey, I'm still sitting here. There's got to be more, you see. So again, it's just amazing. It's amazing what we go through. So we got to sort this out. So you have the knowledge now. So again, it's activating this. It's doing something about it instead of just agreeing to the systems. Yeah. So it's always looking. It's taken me a long time to get here. I decided at a certain point to activate certain things to create a position for myself to be here, to be able to do this. And so it's activating that. And so, yes, we can ask the questions, we can go along with the system, but if we do nothing, then the end result is it's going to be the same as it always was in the past. You just sink back in, even though it looks like okay. For myself now, uh, I'll do anything but agree to an ordinary life, because there is no life here. Everything that I see, I look out at the world and I see what people are doing. They realistically don't have a life, because until they recognize their real awareness, and it's being to being, no. It's a simulated life. There is no life here. It looks like there is. It's kind of like a bad movie. Even though it looks okay, it still is. I always look for, the awareness of things, that awakeness, that awakening of the individual. And so try to prompt that all the time, because there is nothing else. And we're really, again, like you asked the question, are we taking ourselves too serious? Well, we're in a totally desperate situation, and this is what is not recognized. People are sitting there breathing poison, eating poison, drinking poison, living in poison, and it's like it's all okay. And I'm not saying react to it. No, that's not the idea. Or rebel, or, start throwing things around. But really constantly focus on something that makes sense with this world to bring forth, what does make sense with what's going on. Otherwise, you stay senseless. So, yeah, it's a challenge. And realistically, we can just go round and around. There's no explaining it. But the projects that I've brought forth and decided, etc., it's to focus on something. We can create anything, okay? But according to this world and how it is, what I've brought forth with things that are taking place makes sense. And the boys and life itself are backing it because it does make sense. That's the only reason that they're standing real with it, because it does make sense. But it's a lot of steps to get through that. Otherwise, you just stay the same. You must keep moving. You must do something. So the projects themselves become very important. And I know some people take it for granted. Well, it's a choice. See, that's where your free will comes in. It's a choice. And so I see people come and go over the years, and their personal life is more important to them. Yes, you need a job. You need a percentage of your life to sustain yourself according to the system. I'm not saying stop what you're doing, but at the same time, you can create a new road till eventually you've surpassed what you've known. You've surpassed it. And it's not easy, because life is big. And so I'm always willing to take on the challenge. And first I see it, and, as I talk to others about it, most of the time others can't see it, but some people can. And then so we move towards that. And so just like we've created the new school and what we have, the university and the vessel project, yeah, these are big projects, to focus on. But eventually, as you focus on them, you become absorbed in them, and that becomes another step, that takes you out of what already exists, what we've already created. It takes us out of that into another, it's almost like another dimension, you might say, to where we see it, but others don't. This is where the corporation doesn't see it. So really what we have here is we have all these subtle dimensions, if you want to break it down into a literal sense, right here and now with us, to where we see certain things and others do not see it. And they've agreed to what they've decided. That's the subtlety of free will. And so it's a decision. And this is a perplexing position within each individual. Myself, many, many years ago, the boys showed me, to get out of construction. Again, all they can do is show me, all right? And I thought, well, gee, it's a good lifestyle. I'm doing fine. I'm teaching. I'm doing all these things. But at the same time, they kept showing me, and I knew it too. I knew it. I resisted. I resisted in my own way. But I knew what they were doing. I knew that too. But it's my free will that decided things to be so. Because if I didn't decide it, it's just not going to happen. It happened in my awareness, but I had to decide to implement it. I had to decide to activate it, decide to do this, finally decide to step out of it and take the risk to do so. Yeah, it's scary. All of a sudden, hey, I no longer have income there. I got to pay the rent. I got to do all these funny things. So I finally had to let my truck go, which I really didn't need. It's too expensive every month. And so, and I just figured, okay, I'll just ride my bike, which has been like 6 years now. And I'm fine with it. So other things came in. But I had to let go of that because I was shown to do so. And it's a toughie. And many people are shown uh, what to do, but they won't do it. They're shown all the time, but they won't do it. That's where your free will comes in. Yes, it's a toughie. It's a risk-taker position. Otherwise, you just stay the same. And you actually fall back, you might say. Because you become the effect of yourself. You're not allowing life to show you, so you're self-deciding that you know more than life. It's very subtle, yeah. And how can you convince somebody? You can't. We can't convince the government. It's like when Val went to the mayor. I already knew that, she makes things look good. They make it look good, but they're not interested in what they're implying. They use marketing ploy to look good, to appease the masses. It's a sound good situation. We've learned that. And it's not us about changing their minds and making it better. No, that's not the idea. That can't work like that either. Because if they're not aware, then they become slaves of what we decided, you see? That's why the boys don't do that. That is not what life is about. That's like the government, what they're implying all the time. It's like, well, we know what's best for you, you see? And so all you have to do is agree, and we know what's best for you. That cannot work like that simply because that can be an awakening, but at the same time, no, it cannot be. That's not how things work. That's not how life is. Life is like the air that you breathe. There is no definition to it. Again, the sun's shining. There's no definition to it. But at the same time, we use definitions. We create things accordingly that references this reality. That's the very important part, is what we create and what does it reference. So in creation, we need creation because we have these bodies here to wake up with. So it's creating references that make sense. And it's going along with the creations that have already been here, like the trees and the ocean and everything and the animals, what have you, whatever that does make sense. So yeah, life is big. And being self-convinced, like I've said many times, that's a toughie not to be self-convinced. It just depends upon how you're doing that. So it takes a lot to get through this and pay attention. So for now, the new nowness of the is, I label it as something, okay, just to play the game here. But realistically, everything that we've been through, it's best that it's a reference and not a reality. And so to constantly drag what we've been through, and even through every day, uh, learn to be indifferent to it and see it for what it is, and not keep dragging it along as a reality. Because we're just dragging dead bodies. Just like in the past, doesn't matter if it's 1,000,000 years ago or if it's yesterday. I like being indifferent myself. Every moment and seeing what's coming up, because as I am, then I see what's next. It just appears. You know, it's just like reading a book. It just appears, but it's invisible. It's not like in the movies where it's a hologram, you know, where you see something. Oh, I see a vision. You know, it's more than that, really. It's invisible. To me, it's all invisible. I don't need to see it. I don't need to have the experience. It's an isness. Yes, it's nice to have the experience, but it's like when I look at a picture, I look past the picture. I look to where there's seems to be nothing, but there is something there. Yeah. Yeah. So again, that idea that you're asking, Charles, again, it's part of the God idea and whatever. It's is why can't things be nice? And remember Joseph? He was asking, well, where are the miracles of the guides and whatever? See? And so what does he do? He comes from the corporation, comes to us for a while, and then goes back to religion. Now that's nuts. Okay? You go back to self-sacrifice? That's all religion is self-sacrifice. All religion is sacrificial. But, you know, again, that's where his free will comes in. It's not going to work. That's what he's expecting. He's expecting it to be all done for him, when realistically, we ourselves, each one of us, can only recognize what we can. And that cannot be done for us, just like a parent raising a child. The parent cannot make the child see what is possible. The child has to do that. That's the struggle we all have. But it's very fortunate that we have this knowledge and we have this present at this very moment right now. So again, I suggest to very focus on the projects and decide a real life while you're here, more so than just going along with what the system has created. Step up and take on the courage, just like people are, you know, you might say inventing things accordingly. But what we're creating here is the best reference to recognize the is. That's what we're doing. And as people can stand in that reality, then they're eventually no longer the effect of anything. So, yeah, you can have a great life. Well, you can be young and cute and attract everybody and go out there and do whatever. But the end result is you'll soon be old and you'll have nothing. That's the cause and effect of it. And you decided it. And it no longer works. And you'll have nothing. And you'll have forgotten. Now you got to start all over. Every day you start over. Every day is a new life. It really is. And I know the personal self is thinking, oh, gee, I have 20 or 30 or 50 more years to live. No, you don't. That's an absolute. You do not. You have nothing. This life is already done. You just don't see it yet because of the way that you consider things. So until you see the is for what it is, you don't see it, and you don't see what this personal life is because you've already lived millions of lifetimes and you didn't see them either. And here's another one you're not going to see unless you focus and wake up and get with what's going on, or you don't. So yes, that consideration of the boys doing whatever, they do things accordingly to wake the individual up. But that free will, your free will and your recognition, that's very important because without it, there is no life. So you can have everything in the world, and many people do. We look at those people that so-called have things and this and that and whatever, and the kings and queens in their kingdom. But you know what? They don't have any awareness of what they have, so they don't really have anything. It just appears that they have something. The appearance of something. There is a difference, big difference. Yes, and so that's the short explanation, Charles. Thank you for asking.